Hi, and welcome to Intuitive Journey with Desiree. I'm Desiree Holmes, Scherini, your host. And this is just a short follow on to my last episode, talking about the sort of an empathic person relating with a narcissistic personality. Um, what I brought up in there was assertiveness. And I said I was going to do another episode just talking about some ways to practice assertiveness for those of you that it might not come as easily and naturally to. And I suppose part of the reason I want to share this is because it's dear and near to my heart, having and continuing often to be the person who struggles with the assertiveness part, with the standing up for myself or speaking up. I generally, personally, I'm not one that enjoys conflict, right? So, traditionally, historically, in my own life, I would often just not say anything or go along with something or not challenge the status quo. Even now, with current stuff going on, probably anything about the recent medical um, things and political stuff. If I often, say on Facebook, if I shared a news report or a study from a medical journal or my opinion, oh no, if I shared on say Facebook or something, there were those who not just didn't want to hear it, but didn't want me to share it. And I find that just became weary, that there were so many people that didn't want, like in my own space, for me to share information, let alone an opinion. And so I found I've backed off just to avoid the heartache of conflict or derision from a small group of loud voices. So there are times though when, say, if we're in an interpersonal relationship, a friendship, a partner, business, even some, to what degree we might have power, even some governmental choices that are available for us to have any input, that sometimes it is important for our well-being to choose to stand up and face some conflict. And when that time comes and we know we can't just skirt around it or ignore it or pretend like whatever, that it's going to have a direct impact on our life and our well-being, that we need to stand up. And I'm sure those of you listening have had these occasions. What I mentioned in the last episode is, for someone who generally avoids conflict or is a people pleaser or maybe too empathetic about, oh, that person's in a bad mood, so I'm going to let them throw things, or that person, we allow sometimes people to do wrong in order to appease them. Okay, and for some people it's more extreme than others, as far as how far we let things go before we stand up and speak up. But when it comes to it, and you're like, okay, I got to do something, we don't want to fall into the patterns that are maybe old patterns, or too easy to fall into if someone has basically maybe an overly empathetic streak, and those negative responses to challenge or conflict are, say, avoiding, running away from the thing and letting it continue, but just avoiding it. then the stronger your intuitive side of not liking what's happening goes, the more you're going to either want to say something, but if you're afraid to say something, you may turn to being passive aggressive, or sometimes what happens is you let it build, you let it build, you let it build, and you don't know how to properly address things or speak up for yourself. And sometimes people just blow. The quiet, soft-spoken one finally just screams and lets it out, or does something, hopefully not, does something more violent or extreme. So, how to avoid those negative responses to conflict. All right, there's the standard. There's the stop and think. There's the self-awareness. So first, before all of this, going back to the last episode, was about recognizing and being aware, and not always, needing to be the one who pleases the other, not putting yourself in a position in the first place where you are the giver and the other is the taker. But finding the right kinds of relationships where there is a balance. And the more you practice self-awareness, the more you look for these red flags and green flags, you'll know what's right. The more you're in touch with your inner self, and I've certainly, I think my first 3 episodes on this show were about, your heart's desire, getting to know yourself. And I have a program out there. I'll put the link in the description if you're interested in, if I still have it up, but I'll put a link in there about the program of identifying, what do I feel? What am I feeling? So being more self-aware, knowing your true heart, your own goals, your own morals, your own values, instead of giving them away to the outside world in order to feel good about yourself, because you believe that giving of yourself too much is healthy, and it's not. That's why there has to be a healthy balance. So in the last episode, I talked about imagining your inner child and standing up for that inner child. And if you had a child, that you would, not let things happen. So keeping that in mind, and then you could even imagine. So here's one of the tools. You could even imagine when you start to feel like something's not working out fairly, or that you are getting angry, you're feeling put upon, or whatever the relationship issue is, when it's coming to a conflict, what would you say and do for the child? Okay, now imagining that can help you calm down. One of the first things to do is to get away from the emotion of it and really actually start thinking rationally, as far as, how do I respond and interact with this other person that probably, has come to this point that doesn't have a sense of fairness, kindness, empathy like you've been exhibiting or would like to exhibit. So you have to think, okay, how are they thinking? And we're already good. People that are empathic are already good about putting themselves in their shoes, other people's shoes. So this is an excellent tool for putting yourself in the shoes of whoever the, let's call it, antagonist is, whoever the conflict is with. Put yourself in their shoes and say, how are they seeing this? How are they seeing me? And that will give you some insight into, why are they, say, interacting with me like this? Why are they treating me like this? Why are they, saying or doing these things that are raising my discomfort level with them? And that might be that they're not being fair, they're not being kind, whatever it is. Okay. They're, when you can picture how they're thinking and what they're thinking, then you can step back in yourself and understand even better, how can I respond to that kind of thinking? What can I say to that, thought, that way of thinking, right? And it's not about trying to convince the other of your being right or wrong, because there are some people that is, some cases where it doesn't matter who's right or wrong, but there needs to be a balance. So ideally, if the other party is open to communicating, so let's just make an assumption that the other party is open to communicating and that they might want a win-win, fair resolution instead of getting angry or yelling or walking out or getting up to here with it or getting passive aggressive, or which would include sarcasm, making negative jokes. Okay, instead of any of those, toward meeting what you desire, there's something called the I statements. So it's, and I might have done this in a previous episode, it's worth repeating the idea that when you do or say, you tell the person, I, and then you fill in, I think or feel such. And then the next step is, and I'm wondering if that was your intention. So say the person, is disregards you, or let's say it's about money. Okay. Say you every time you go out, it seems like this person forgets their wallet or something, right? Handily, or they haggle over the bill and say, oh, well, I did this, so you got to do that. And, maybe they're not being fair financially, but maybe they've taken advantage of you financially. You could say, when we go out and I find that I'm paying the majority of the bills, over time, it's been a repeated thing and you don't offer or you don't pay your fair share, I think that you must think I have more money than you, or I feel like you don't value my friendship, you value, what I'm paying, or whatever it is that you're, go inside yourself and say, what is it that you don't like about what's happening? And I just wanted to share that with you. And I wonder what you think of how this has been going on, what your thoughts are, and if that was your intention. And often, if it's somebody who gives a darn, they will say, I hadn't really thought about it. I'm sorry. I realize I have been taking advantage of you and I shouldn't have. And next time we go, it's my treat, and we'll take turns from now on, and we'll just, make sure that we're not, you're not paying for my stuff or whatever, right? Ideally. Then say you have that same scenario and it's someone who says, oh, well, gosh, I didn't realize you were so selfish. And this is where I'm going with this. You'll get the person who you expect to be responsive and to care how you feel. That you might get, I didn't realize you were so selfish. I guess we just, won't go out anymore because, you can't handle it. Or, I thought you cared, I thought my friendship was worth more than money to you. See, and they'll turn it around the other way sometimes. And you're like, wait a minute, I was just saying I didn't feel like this is fair. And they'll say, well, if you really cared about me, you wouldn't even bring this up. So there, you will end up with these kind of responses from people sometimes. And that's when you think, okay, how important is this person in my life? And what are the benefits of this relationship? And then you start to say, here's the red flag. Okay, but you stood up for yourself instead of continuing to go down this road with this relationship. That if this is a sort of reaction you get from that, chances are in every other part of your relationship, you're going to have that sort of imbalance. And likely it's time for you to really reconsider the relationship, and being friends or being partners. Sometimes it's better, healthier for you to be alone without that friendship or partner than it is to be with them. It's like, maybe we all need to eat, for example, but sometimes it's better for you not to eat rotten food that makes you sick than it is to go hungry, right? And so in interpersonal relationships, sometimes we just put ourselves into these situations where we are poisoning ourselves because we think it's better than nothing, and that's not true. That was a little segue into why you want to stand up for yourself and face what's really going on sometimes. So that's I statements. That's one way of a calm assertiveness, is to simply state matter of factly when you do or say such and such, I think or feel such and such. And, I don't like that feeling or that thought. And then you can open that conversation. That's different. That's different. And don't fall into the trap of, you made me mad. So keeping it to taking responsibility over how you think or feel or reacted to it. No one else makes you do anything. Your response to someone else's behavior is what happens. And we all may have different responses. Some people, you could do something that doesn't bother me, it might bother someone else, right? So our responses are individual, and they may not be right. They might not be true. And that's why you check it out with that person, this is how I'm taking it. And is that how you intended it? Okay. And that also has them take personal responsibility for what they think or say around you. Okay. And it just opens it up. But don't fall into the trap of saying, you always such and such, you never such and such, or you make me, right? Stay away from words that say you are, because then that closes down communication. To stay away from any term that is, accusing the person, or making a, broad statement of, you always, forget, or you're never on time, or, it's instead you could say, when we have a date and I'm waiting for you, I feel like you don't care about my time. And it feels uncomfortable for me to always, oops, I almost did it, to wait for you when you're late. I feel like you don't really consider me. And I just want to let you know how I feel about that. And I'd like it if you could be on time with me. Okay. That opens up, that allows the other person to take personal responsibility in their response, and how they're going to interrelate and be on time or not, to the best of their ability. But if you said you're always late, then the person just gets defensive, and it turns into a, pushback. Okay, so that was that. Another positive assertiveness practice is to practice saying no. I'm not comfortable with that. To know when to say no, to allow yourself this chance to be aware of how you're feeling. So when you practice, no, I'm not okay with that, instead of, you can just stop there. Practice saying, no, I'm not comfortable with that, instead of explaining, because a lot of times we feel like it's not okay to say no. It's okay to say no, and you don't have to explain why. You can simply say, no, I'm not comfortable with that, and allow the other person to ask why, instead of going into a big old explanation of why, and, well, maybe I'm wrong. I guess I could have, I guess I practice just being okay with your response and with the way that you're feeling, and saying, yeah, this is not okay. I don't like this. And let the other person then ask you, oh, why, or acknowledge. So another way to practice positive assertiveness is to take your time. Again, Those people on the people-pleasing spectrum, high on it, will tend to feel like they need to jump. If you have the person who's used to calling the shots, being a bit of a bully or being bossy, and they're used to this response from you of yes, you're like, oh yes, okay, let me, that you may not have even realized that you're always responding to them, responding to that, jumping through their hoops. You may not have even realized it until you stop. Stop doing it, until you just pause. And so it's again that self-awareness, that stop and think and look, right? It's like crossing the street, right? Stop, look both ways and say, wait, do I want to go forward? Is this what I want to do? Does this meet my needs as well? Am I doing this for the wrong reasons? Does this fit my values? Or am I just going to do it because they want me to do it, whatever it is? Am I just going to do it because that's what I always do? Am I just going to do or respond or whatever the issue is because I don't want to face the conflict if I don't? So stop, pause, wait, and consider if whatever it is in your best interest. I'm not saying only your interest. I'm not saying, but there's got to be, don't do things, don't behave, don't jump through hoops, don't appease if it isn't good for you, if it's not a healthy choice for you. And that may be emotional, financial, it could be career, it could be relationship. Don't do it just because it, whatever it is, says so. Stop, think, consider, and take your time. You're the boss of you. And that will also provide you that sense to just slow down. And if you're angry or feeling resentful, that will help you to regain both your composure as well as your personal power. And when you have composure and personal power, you can actually interact in a calm, assertive, a positively assertive way instead of a attack and defend way. And the goal is to be assertive while still remaining calm, positive, thoughtful for both yourself and the other party. And at the same time, hoping but not always necessarily receiving and expecting the same in return. Being prepared for the fact that not everybody has your best interests at heart. Not everybody wants to be fair. Not everybody cares about fairness, kindness. A lot of people simply care about winning and their own power and their own well-being, their own win. And and the higher on that narcissistic scale, sociopathic scale, they will, even do harm to others financially and emotionally to achieve their gains. And that's kind of going back to the last episode a little more about you can't always, unfortunately, expect the right response, even to your positive assertiveness. There will be struggles, but the more you practice, the better and easier it will be for you. You'll just kind of sense that calmness come over you and say, it's okay. Now, that being said, it's okay to get angry. Now, getting angry, feeling that anger and allowing yourself to know and acknowledge, I'm angry. This is not okay. That is a positive step. Acting out in anger doesn't do you any favors. See the difference? Being angry is above being apathetic and saying, "Oh well, I don't care." It's above being a doormat. It's a step up, because when you're angry, that means you're acknowledging your inner world. That means you're acknowledging when something is not right, and you can acknowledge that. You bring in that awareness. Wow, I'm angry. This isn't fair. I don't think this is right. And then you think, why? What's going on? What are the circumstances? Take your time and then say, okay, how am I going to address my needs that brought on this anger? How am I going to address my needs and be assertive in this situation without throwing a tantrum or having a tizzy fit or living in anger? Because feeling the anger and acknowledging the anger, that's great, but don't walk around angry. And the reason you would walk around angry is because you're not allowing yourself to express your assertiveness and your personal power and to stand up and speak up for yourself. Now, another tool that you could use in your assertiveness skill basket is the feedback sandwich. And this is great this is a wonderful element in business too. If you're a supervisor and you need to, talk to an employee that, is maybe needs some improvement, or in a relationship, right? So it's an assertiveness tool, but it's also a great communication tool, just to give feedback to someone. And the feedback sandwich is you give a compliment and you make a point of saying something that's good about the person you're interacting with, something that you're pleased with. So say it was your husband, and you start to feel resentful about, like, say he never does the dishes, or there you go with the word never, but he seldom does the dishes, or maybe he never does the dishes and you'd like him to do the dishes sometimes, right? Or certain things, right? So let's say it's the dishes, and you're starting to build that resentment, and it's like, there it is again. He's on the sofa, he's gone to his man cave or out to the gym, and it's after dinner. You're doing the dishes again, and you don't have your you time, or vice versa. Okay, whatever it is, but and so you're starting to get resentful. And if you're afraid of conflict, you're going to build that anger, and you might blow, you might just yell the next time, or you might be doing passive aggressive things like not doing his dishes, or only doing your dishes, right? And sometimes, a lot of times, we with some of the things that people pleasers will do in that whole range of passive aggressive stuff is that they'll hurt themselves by trying to not face not just emotionally, but I'm saying they might say, okay, I'm not going to do that, so I'm just going to let this other person never cleans the bathroom, so I'm just not going to clean it either. And then everybody's living in filth. One person it bothers, the other person still doesn't care. Okay, so the feedback sandwich, what you would say to your husband is, honey, I really liked how you, whatever, the other day when you took out the trash, when I didn't ask you to, or when you did do the dishes. Wow, when you did the dishes the other day, I was so happy. That really, really made my day. And I would, so that's the positive. Then you give the whatever is that could use improvement, or that you'd like to see a change in a positive way. And that's when you say, and I'd really like it if we make a schedule and we can trade off on doing the dishes. And you could even say, because you could do that little bit of an I statement in there, because I noticed that I start feeling resentful when I do the dishes more often, and you have some free time, and I find I get a little resentful, and I'd like free time too. So I'd like us to set up a plan to trade off, or whatever it is. And then you end with a positive. Okay, and that positive might just, and it's all could be one little sentence, right? That positive could be, I really appreciate that you care enough about me. This little This is a little Dale Carnegie here. I really appreciate, and I know that you love me and you care enough about me to like to have this conversation or make a plan, right? So you end with a positive. So positive, and I'm not going to say negative, but the positive, the negative, the positive, and then address what you'd like to see change, and then end on a positive again. That's why it's called feedback sandwich. It's positivity on both sides. And ideally, it's a good feeling conversation. Ideally, the person doesn't feel attacked or judged, or you're not expressing anger at what's not happening, but rather you're showing appreciation for the good things. So, and you're stating your needs in a calm and assertive way, and in a way that would be fair. Okay, and again, you end on the positive note of appreciation or gratitude for something about them. And the more that you can stop yourself before you get resentful, stop yourself before you get angry, and insert positive assertiveness, the happier you'll be, and the happier whatever the relationship will be, because things are getting addressed. And again, going back to, you may find you get pushback. You may find, if you've got someone high up on that narcissistic personality traits, as kind, as feedback sandwichy, as I statementy you can be, as positively assertive and calm as you are, some people are just not going to participate. Some people are going to push back. They're going to, deflect, demean, and not want to have anything to do with it because it doesn't suit them. They're happy with the status quo and they don't want it to change. And that's when you start taking notes and thinking, wow, okay, let's see where this goes. And you start being more aware, and again, being positively assertive. And that also may mean taking control of your life and choosing who you surround yourself with and what you spend your emotional, intellectual, and financial energy on. And those should be things that all enrich you and are fair. So I think that's it for now. I know I could probably go on to a whole lot more, and I usually go on longer than I meant to, but I hope you'll consider these things and use them next time you're feeling conflict with someone. Just remember these tips. And of course, we will end on, if you have allowed yourself to get to that anger point, count to 10, remember these skills, take a break, take your time, and use positive assertiveness in your life. Thanks for being here. See you next time on Intuitive Journey with Desiree. Bye.